Marcus Chen wiped down the stainless steel counter for the third time that evening. His small restaurant was nearly empty. Only 2 tables had customers left, and they were finishing their desserts. It was Tuesday night, the slowest night of the week. Marcus looked at the clock on the wall. It was 9:40 in the evening. The restaurant closed at 10. He sighed and looked around his kitchen. 3 years ago, he had been so excited to open this place. He had used all his savings and borrowed money from his uncle. The restaurant was his dream. But now that dream felt like it was dying slowly. Every month, fewer customers came through the door. Every month, the bills got harder to pay. Maria, his sous chef, was cleaning the stove. She had been with him since the beginning. She was loyal and hard-working, but Marcus could see the worry in her eyes, too. She had a family to feed. If the restaurant closed, she would lose her job. "You can go home early tonight, Maria," Marcus said. "I'll finish closing up." Maria looked at him with concern. "Are you sure, chef?" "I don't mind staying. I'm sure. Go home to your kids. Tell them good night for me." Maria nodded, took off her apron, and grabbed her bag. "See you tomorrow, Marcus. Try not to worry too much, okay?" Marcus gave her a weak smile. "I'll try." After Maria left through the back door, Marcus walked out to the dining room. The 2 remaining tables were paying their bills. Jessica, the waitress, was processing their credit cards at the small counter near the entrance. She was young, only 22, and she was studying at the local college. She worked part-time to pay for her books and rent. "Quiet night," Jessica said as she handed the receipts to the customers. "Every night is quiet now," Marcus replied, trying not to sound too bitter. The customers left, and Jessica started clearing their tables. Marcus helped her, stacking plates and wiping down the surfaces. As they worked, Marcus noticed something in the corner of the dining room. It was the old upright piano that had been there when he bought the place. The previous owner had left it behind, saying it was too heavy and expensive to move. Marcus had never paid much attention to it. He had thrown a decorative cloth over it and put a vase with fake flowers on top. It just became part of the furniture, something customers barely noticed. The wood was dark and scratched. Some of the keys were yellowed with age, but it still worked. Marcus had tested it once 3 years ago when he first moved in. He stared at the piano for a moment, lost in thought. Then the front door opened. Marcus turned, ready to say they were about to close. But the words stuck in his throat when he saw the man who entered. The man was in his 60s with silver hair combed back neatly. He wore an expensive gray suit with a crisp white shirt and a dark blue tie. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. He carried himself with confidence, his back straight, his steps measured and deliberate. Everything about him said money and class. "Good evening," the man said in a voice that had a slight French accent. "I hope I am not too late for dinner." Jessica glanced at Marcus, unsure what to say. Marcus looked at the clock. It was 9:45. They closed in 15 minutes. "We're about to close, sir," Marcus said politely. "But if you want something quick, I can make you a simple dish." The man smiled slightly. "I appreciate your honesty, but I am not here for something quick." He walked further into the dining room, his eyes scanning the space with the careful attention of someone who noticed everything. "My name is Henri Beaumont. You may have heard of me." Marcus searched his memory. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Jessica shook her head slightly, indicating she didn't know either. Henry seemed to expect this reaction. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. He handed it to Marcus. Marcus read the card. His eyes widened. Henri Beaumont was a food critic. Not just any food critic. He had written for major magazines and newspapers across Europe and America. He had consulted for the Michelin Guide. His reviews could make or break a restaurant. "Mr. Beaumont," Marcus said, his voice suddenly tight. "This is unexpected. If I had known you were coming, I would have prepared something special." "That is exactly why I do not announce my visits," Henri said with a knowing smile. "I prefer to see restaurants as they truly are, not as they pretend to be for critics." Marcus felt his heart pounding. This could be his chance. If Henri Beaumont wrote something good about his restaurant, customers would come. He could save his business, but if the review was bad, it could be the final nail in the coffin. "Please sit anywhere you like," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'll prepare our best dishes for you." Henri held up his hand. "Not so fast, Chef Chen. I have a different idea tonight." Marcus frowned, confused. "A different idea?" Henri walked slowly toward the piano in the corner. He ran his hand along the dusty top, then lifted the cloth to look at the keys. "Tell me, do you play?" "Play what?" Marcus asked, though he already knew what Henri meant. "The piano, of course." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. His mouth went dry. "No, I used to a long time ago. But not anymore." "How long ago?" 15 years. Henri turned to face him, his eyes sharp and curious. "Why did you stop?" Marcus didn't want to answer. This was getting too personal, too close to memories he had locked away. "I just did. I became a chef instead." "What does this have to do with dinner?" Henri smiled again, but this time there was something mysterious in his expression. "Everything, Chef Chen. It has everything to do with dinner." Jessica stood near the counter, watching this strange conversation unfold. She looked as confused as Marcus felt. "I have been a food critic for 35 years, Henri continued. "I have eaten in the finest restaurants in the world. I have tasted dishes prepared by master chefs, geniuses with food. But do you know what I have learned in all those years?" Marcus shook his head. "I have learned that technical skill is not enough. Many chefs can cook perfectly. They know every technique. They can make beautiful plates. But their food has no soul. It tastes good, but it does not touch the heart. It does not tell a story." "I don't understand what this has to do with the piano," Marcus said, feeling frustrated and nervous. Henri walked closer to Marcus. "I stood outside your kitchen window for 10 minutes before I came in. I watched you work. You have good technique. Your knife skills are solid. Your cooking is clean and precise. But I saw no passion, no fire. You were just going through the motions like a machine." Marcus wanted to argue, but he couldn't. Henri was right. For months now, maybe even years, cooking had felt like a chore. He was tired. He was worried about money. He had lost the joy that had made him want to become a chef in the first place. "So here is my challenge," Henri said, his voice becoming more serious. "I will not order from your menu. Instead, you will sit at that piano and play something for me, anything you want, and I will judge whether the emotion in your music deserves a meal. If it does, you will cook for me. If it does not, I will leave and you will never see me again." Marcus stared at Henri, unable to believe what he was hearing. "You want me to audition for you? With a piano?" "This is crazy, perhaps," Henri said calmly. "But I am a crazy old man who has earned the right to make crazy requests. Do you accept my challenge, or should I leave now?" Marcus looked at Jessica. She raised her eyebrows, as surprised as he was. Then he looked at the piano. His chest felt tight. He hadn't played in 15 years. Not since his mother died, his mother. She was the one who taught him to play. Every evening after school, she would sit with him at their old piano in the tiny apartment above her noodle shop. She would guide his fingers over the keys, teaching him scales and simple melodies. As he got older, she taught him more complex pieces, Chopin, Debussy, Mozart. "Music and cooking are the same," she used to tell him in Mandarin. "Both need your heart, not just your hands. If you play with only your fingers, it is just noise. If you cook with only your skills, it is just food. But if you use your soul, you create something beautiful." After she died from cancer, Marcus couldn't touch the piano anymore. Every key reminded him of her. Every song was a memory that hurt too much. So he sold their old piano and focused only on cooking. He thought he could put all his passion into food instead. But somewhere along the way, he had lost that too. Now this strange French critic was asking him to face the thing he had been avoiding for 15 years. "Why are you doing this?" Marcus asked quietly. Henri's expression softened slightly. "Because I can see you are drowning, Chef Chen. Your restaurant is failing. You have lost your way. And I think I know why. You have forgotten what your mother taught you." Marcus felt like he had been punched in the stomach. "How do you know about my mother?" Henri pointed to a small framed photo on the wall near the kitchen entrance. Marcus had hung it there when he opened the restaurant. It showed his mother in her white chef coat standing in her noodle shop, smiling at the camera. Below the photo was a small plaque that read, "In memory of Lin Chen, she taught me that cooking is love made visible." "I notice everything," Henri said simply. "And I recognize the look of grief when I see it. You are still mourning her even after all these years. And your grief has made your cooking lifeless." Marcus felt anger rising in his chest. Who was this man to come into his restaurant and say these things? "You don't know anything about me or my mother. You are right. I do not. But I know what it is like to lose someone you love. I know how it can steal the color from your world." And I know that sometimes we need someone to push us to feel again, even when it hurts. The restaurant was completely silent now. Even Jessica had stopped moving. She stood frozen, watching this intense conversation. Marcus took a deep breath. His pride told him to refuse to ask Henri to leave. But another part of him, a deeper part, was curious. When was the last time he had been challenged like this? When was the last time he had felt anything strongly? If I do this, Marcus said slowly, and you think my playing deserves a meal, what happens then? Then you will cook for me, but not from your menu. You will cook whatever your heart tells you to cook, something inspired by the music you play, something true. Marcus looked at the piano again. It suddenly seemed very large and intimidating. His hands were shaking slightly. I'm out of practice, he said. I'll make mistakes. I do not care about mistakes. I care about feeling. Marcus stood there for a long moment, weighing his options. Finally, he made his decision. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was just exhaustion from running away for so long. Okay, he said. I'll do it. Henri's face showed approval. He walked to the nearest table and sat down, folding his hands in front of him like a judge preparing to hear a case. Marcus untied his apron with trembling fingers. He folded it carefully and set it on the counter. Then he walked slowly toward the piano. Each step felt heavy. Jessica watched him with wide eyes, sensing that something important was happening. Marcus reached the piano and lifted the cloth completely off. Dust floated in the air, caught in the dim restaurant lights. He looked down at the keys. Some were yellowed. Some were chipped. But they were still there, waiting. He pulled out the bench and sat down. The wood creaked under his weight. He flexed his fingers, stretching them. They felt stiff and clumsy. He placed his hands on the keys but didn't press down yet. What should he play? His mind was blank with panic. Then slowly a melody came to him. It was one of his mother's favorites, Clair de Lune, by Claude Debussy. She had played it often in the evenings, after the noodle shop closed and the streets grew quiet. She would sit at their piano and play, and young Marcus would do his homework at the table, surrounded by the beautiful, sad music. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he began to play. The first notes were shaky. His fingers stumbled over the keys, searching for the right positions. He hit a wrong note and winced. But he didn't stop. He pushed through the mistakes, letting muscle memory slowly return. His hands remembered what his mind had tried to forget. As he played, the music began to flow more smoothly. The restaurant filled with the soft, haunting melody of Clair de Lune. Marcus stopped thinking about Henri watching him. He stopped thinking about his failing restaurant. He stopped thinking about anything except the music and the memories it brought back. He saw his mother's face, smiling as she taught him this piece. He remembered her patient voice. Feel the moonlight, Marcus. The song is called Moonlight. Play it like water, gentle and flowing. He remembered the smell of her kitchen, the way she hummed while she cooked. He remembered her last days in the hospital, when she was too weak to play anymore but would ask him to describe music to her, to tell her about the songs he would play someday. Tears began to roll down Marcus's cheeks, but he kept playing. The emotion poured out through his fingers, through the keys, into the air. This was not perfect playing. It was not technically brilliant. But it was real. It was honest. It was the sound of a son remembering his mother, of love and loss mixed together. Jessica stood near the counter with her hand over her mouth, her own eyes wet with tears. Even Henri, the experienced critic who had seen everything, sat very still, his expression no longer stern but soft with recognition. Marcus played the final notes of the piece, letting them fade into silence. He kept his hands on the keys for a moment longer, not ready to let go. Then slowly he lifted them and opened his eyes. He turned to look at Henri. The old critic was standing now, and there were tears on his face. Henri began to clap. It was slow, measured applause, the kind that came from deep respect rather than mere politeness. The sound echoed in the quiet restaurant. That, Henri said, his voice thick with emotion, was the sound of loss transformed into beauty. That was the sound of memory made real. That Chef Chen was art. Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve, feeling embarrassed by his tears but also strangely relieved. He felt lighter somehow, as if playing that song had released something that had been trapped inside him for years. "Does that mean I passed your test?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. Henri walked closer, his footsteps slow and deliberate. That was not a test, Chef Chen, that was a gift. You gave me a gift with your playing, and now I understand what you are capable of. I don't understand. Henri pulled out the chair across from the piano and sat down. He looked tired, suddenly older. Before I came here tonight, I watched many chefs. I ate at several restaurants. They all had skill. They all made good food. But none of them had what you just showed me. None of them had a soul that was willing to break open and share its pain. You asked me earlier why I'm doing this. Let me tell you the truth. My daughter was a pianist. She was brilliant, destined for greatness. She played Debussy better than anyone I have ever heard. Claire de Lune was her favorite piece. She played it at every recital, every competition. Henri paused, his voice catching. She died 5 years ago. Car accident. She was only 28. Since then, I have not been able to listen to that song. It hurt too much. But tonight, when you played it, I could hear her again. I could feel her presence. You brought her back to me just for a few minutes. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I am sorry for yours. We are both fathers and sons who have lost the women we loved most. We both know what it means to have a hole in our hearts that never quite heals. They sat in silence for a moment, two men connected by grief and music. Finally, Henri stood up. Now, Chef Chen, here is the rest of my challenge. You have shown me you can play with emotion. Now I want to see if you can cook with emotion. I want you to create a meal inspired by what you just played. Not technique, not recipes. I want you to cook the feeling of that music. Can you do that? Marcus stood up from the piano bench. He looked toward his kitchen. For the first time in months, maybe years, he felt something stirring inside him. It was not just fear or obligation. It was excitement. It was the old fire, the passion that had made him want to become a chef in the first place. Yes, Marcus said. I can do that, Henri smiled. You have 1 hour. I will wait here. Marcus nodded and walked toward the kitchen. Jessica followed him, unsure what to do but wanting to help. As Marcus pushed through the kitchen doors, he felt different. The grief was still there. The worry about money was still there. But now mixed in with all of that was something else. It was hope. It was purpose. It was the memory of his mother's voice saying, "Music and cooking are the same. Both need your heart, not just your hands." Tonight, Marcus Chen was going to cook with his heart for the first time in years, and he was going to show Henri Beaumont what his mother had taught him all those years ago. Marcus stood in his kitchen, looking at the ingredients in his refrigerator. His hands were still shaking slightly from playing the piano. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was clear in a way it hadn't been for a long time. Jessica stood behind him, waiting for instructions. She had never seen Marcus like this before. Usually he was calm and methodical, following recipes exactly, measuring everything carefully. But now his eyes were bright and intense. He looked like a different person. "What are you going to make?" Jessica asked quietly. Marcus didn't answer right away. He pulled out vegetables, fish, meat, herbs. He laid them on the counter without any clear plan. Normally, this would have made him nervous. Cooking without a recipe, without measurements, without a clear idea of the final dish. But tonight something told him to trust his instincts. "I don't know yet," Marcus finally said, "but I'll know when I start." He thought about the music he had just played. Claire de Lune meant light of the moon in French. The piece was soft and flowing, sometimes melancholy, sometimes peaceful. It spoke of quiet nights and reflection. It spoke of beauty found in sadness. It spoke of memories that hurt, but also comfort. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to translate those feelings into food. What did moonlight taste like? What flavor was memory? What texture was grief? Then slowly ideas began to form. The meal would be a journey, like the song was a journey. It would start light and innocent, then move through sadness, longing, and finally reach a place of bittersweet acceptance. 5 courses, like 5 movements of an emotional symphony. Marcus opened his eyes and began to work. For the first course, he wanted something delicate and pure, something that represented innocence and simple beauty. He thought about his childhood, about the moments before loss taught him what pain was. He remembered white flowers his mother kept on the kitchen windowsill. Jasmine flowers. Their scent was light and clean. He had jasmine tea in the pantry. He could use that. Marcus started heating water and steeping the jasmine tea until it was very strong. While it cooled, he prepared a base of silken tofu. Silken tofu was soft and neutral like a blank canvas. He would infuse it with the jasmine flavor. Jessica watched as Marcus worked with a precision she had seen before, but now there was something else. His movements were fluid, almost like dancing. He wasn't just following steps. He was creating. "Can you bring me the yuzu juice from the cold storage?" Marcus asked. Jessica hurried to get it. When she returned, Marcus was carefully straining the jasmine tea. He mixed it with the yuzu juice, a tiny bit of honey, and a pinch of sea salt. Then he poured the mixture over the silken tofu, which he had cut into small, delicate cubes and placed in small glass bowls. He garnished each bowl with a single jasmine flower petal and a small curl of lemon zest. "This is the amuse-bouche," Marcus explained. "The beginning. It represents the first notes of the song. Simple, pure, innocent." Jessica looked at the tiny creation. It was beautiful in its simplicity. The white tofu and the pale golden liquid looked like small clouds in a sunset sky. "It's beautiful," she whispered. But Marcus was already moving to the next course. He didn't have time to appreciate his work. He had to keep the momentum going. For the second course, he wanted to capture the feeling when the music turned melancholy. That moment in Clair de Lune when you realize the moonlight is not just beautiful, but also lonely. When you understand that some things are gone forever, Marcus decided on a soup. Soup was comfort, but it could also be sadness. The warmth of soup reminded you of being cared for, but it also reminded you of being sick, of needing care because something was wrong. He started with a base of dashi, the traditional Japanese broth made from kombu and bonito flakes. His mother used to make a simple version of dashi for her noodle shop. She taught him how to taste the water, how to know when the flavor was right. Marcus heated the dashi and added white miso paste, but not too much. He wanted the soup to be light, almost clear, so you could see through it, like looking through sadness to find truth. Then he added ingredients that represented different kinds of loss. Mushrooms, because they grew in dark places. They absorbed the flavors around them like grief absorbs joy. He used shiitake mushrooms, sliced thin. He added tiny cubes of winter melon, which dissolved slowly on the tongue, like memories fading, and he added glass noodles, thin and translucent, barely there. You could see them in the soup, but when you tried to hold them with your chopsticks, they slipped away. For the garnish, Marcus used something his mother taught him. White pepper, not black pepper. White pepper had a sharper, more complex flavor. It made you pay attention. It woke up your senses just when you thought you understood the dish. He sprinkled the white pepper on top with a steady hand, then added a few drops of sesame oil and 3 small leaves of cilantro. Jessica brought him clean bowls, and Marcus carefully ladled the soup into each one. The liquid was so clear you could see the ingredients floating inside like memories suspended in time. "This one is about understanding loss," Marcus said quietly. "About that moment when you realize someone is really gone." His voice caught slightly. He was thinking about his mother's funeral, standing in the rain watching them lower her casket into the ground. That moment when he knew she would never teach him another song, never cook another meal for him. Jessica put her hand on his shoulder for just a second. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Marcus took a deep breath and moved on to the third course. This one was about longing, that part of the song where the melody reaches, trying to grasp something just out of reach. The notes climb higher, searching, yearning. For this feeling, Marcus chose fish. Fish was delicate and required careful handling. If you overcooked it, it became dry and lifeless. If you undercooked it, it was raw and unprepared. The fish had to be perfect, caught at exactly the right moment, just like trying to hold onto a memory before it fades completely. Marcus selected black cod from the refrigerator. It was an expensive fish, fatty and rich. He had been saving it for a special occasion, but it had been sitting there for 3 days. He needed to use it soon anyway. Black cod was forgiving. Its high-fat content meant it stayed moist even if you cooked it a little too long. But Marcus didn't plan to overcook it. He was going to cook it perfectly with all the attention he should have been giving his food all along. He made a marinade using sake, mirin, miso paste, and a touch of sugar. But he added something unusual. Star anise, 1 whole star anise crushed. His mother used star anise in her cooking sometimes, saying it added a mysterious depth, a flavor you couldn't quite name but knew was there. Marcus coated the fish in the marinade and let it sit while he prepared the accompaniments. He wanted something bitter to balance the rich fish, something that represented the difficulty of longing, the way yearning for the past could be painful. He chose rapini, the bitter Italian greens. He would blanch them quickly and then sauté them with garlic and a little bit of chili flakes, just enough heat to remind you that desire burns. For the starch, Marcus made a simple rice, but he cooked it with coconut milk instead of water, and he added a small amount of turmeric for color. The rice became creamy and golden like hope mixed with reality. Marcus heated his broiler to very high heat. He placed the fish on a baking sheet and slid it under the broiler. He watched it carefully, his eyes never leaving the fish. He could see the marinade bubbling and caramelizing. He could smell the miso turning sweet and complex. At exactly the right moment, when the top was golden brown but the inside was still tender. He pulled it out. He plated the dish with the rice on the bottom, the rapini arranged beside it, and the fish placed carefully on top. He spooned some of the reduced marinade over the fish and garnished it with thin slices of scallion and a small amount of black sesame seeds. Looking at the plate, Marcus felt satisfied. This dish said what he wanted it to say. It was beautiful but complicated, sweet but bitter. It was about wanting something you could never have again. 3 down, 2 to go, Jessica said, checking the time. You've been cooking for 40 minutes. Marcus nodded. He was sweating now, despite the restaurant's air conditioning. His chef's coat was damp, but he felt energized, not tired. This was the most alive he had felt in years. For the 4th course, he needed to represent struggle. That part of the song where the notes became more intense, where the emotion built up, where you fought against the sadness instead of just accepting it. Meat was the obvious choice for struggle. Meat required force to prepare. You had to understand the muscle, work with or against the grain. You had to respect the animal that died to feed you. Marcus pulled out a duck breast. Duck was rich and gamey, with a thick layer of fat that needed to be rendered slowly and carefully. If you rushed it, the fat stayed rubbery and unpleasant. If you did it right, the fat became crispy and delicious, and the meat underneath stayed tender and flavorful. Duck was about patience and technique. It was about struggling with the process and trusting it would turn out right. Marcus scored the skin of the duck breast in a crosshatch pattern, being careful not to cut into the meat. He seasoned it generously with salt and pepper. Then he placed it in a cold pan, skin side down. This was important. You started duck in a cold pan so the fat would render slowly as the pan heated. If you started with a hot pan, the skin would burn before the fat could melt away. Marcus turned the heat to medium and waited. He listened to the sound of the fat sizzling, watched it slowly turn from white to golden. The smell filled the kitchen, rich and savory. He pressed down on the duck with his spatula, making sure all of the skin made contact with the pan. While the duck cooked, Marcus prepared a sauce. He wanted something that represented the complexity of struggle. Sweet and sour, dark and light. He started with fresh cherries, even though they were expensive this time of year. He had a small container in the refrigerator. He pitted them quickly, his knife moving with practiced efficiency. He put them in a small pot with red wine, balsamic vinegar, a little sugar, and a pinch of cinnamon. As the sauce simmered, the cherries broke down and released their juice. The liquid turned deep purple, almost black. Marcus tasted it. The sweetness of the cherries fought with the acidity of the vinegar and wine. The cinnamon added warmth and spice. It tasted like conflict and resolution at the same time. He checked the duck. The skin was golden and crispy now. He flipped it over and cooked the meat side for just 2 minutes. Duck breast should be served medium rare, pink in the middle. Overcooked duck became tough and livery. Marcus removed the duck from the pan and let it rest while he prepared the accompaniment. He wanted something earthy and grounding, something that said, "You are still here. You survived the struggle." He chose roasted root vegetables, carrots, parsnips, and beets. He had already roasted them earlier in the evening for the regular menu, so they were ready. He just needed to warm them and season them. He tossed them with olive oil, fresh thyme, and a touch of honey. Marcus sliced the duck breast against the grain, revealing the pink meat inside. He arranged the slices on the plate with the roasted vegetables. He drizzled the cherry sauce around the plate, not over the duck, so the crispy skin would stay crispy. The plate looked dramatic and intense. The deep red of the beets, the dark purple of the sauce, the golden brown of the duck skin. It was a plate about power and survival. Jessica looked at the clock again. 55 minutes. One more course. Marcus felt the pressure, but he also felt confident. He knew what the final dish had to be: dessert, the resolution, the moment at the end of Clair de Lune when all the complex emotions settled into something bittersweet and accepting. Dessert had to be about memory itself, about how the past was both painful and precious, about how loss taught you to appreciate what you had when you had it. Marcus thought about his mother's favorite dessert. She loved simple things. She wasn't interested in elaborate pastries or complicated confections. She liked things that tasted like childhood, like comfort, like home. Her favorite had been sticky rice with mango, but Marcus was going to elevate it, transform it into something more refined while keeping the soul of the original. He started with sweet rice that he had cooked earlier for the regular menu. It was still warm. He mixed it with coconut milk that he had infused with pandan leaves for a subtle, grassy sweetness. He added sugar and a pinch of salt. Then he formed the rice into small, neat squares using a rectangular mold. Each square was about 2 inches across, perfectly shaped. For the mango, Marcus sliced it paper-thin using his sharpest knife. He arranged the slices so they overlapped like flower petals. In the center of each flower, he placed one square of the coconut rice. But he needed something more, something that represented the complexity of memory, something that was both familiar and surprising. He made a quick coconut cream by reducing coconut milk with a little sugar until it thickened. Then he added something unexpected. The white pepper again. Just a tiny amount. Enough to make you pause and think, what is that flavor? Not enough to be obvious, but enough to add depth. He drizzled the coconut cream around each dessert and garnished it with a small mint leaf and a sprinkle of toasted sesame seeds. Finally, Marcus added one more element, a small piece of candied ginger, placed delicately on top of each rice square. The ginger was spicy and sweet, a reminder that memories could be sharp and warming at the same time. He stepped back and looked at his creation. It was beautiful, simple but elegant, respectful of tradition but creative enough to be interesting. Done, Marcus said, exhaling deeply. Let's bring it out. Jessica gathered serving trays while Marcus arranged each course in order. The tiny jasmine tofu, the clear soup, the miso cod with bitter greens, the duck with cherry sauce, the coconut rice with mango. 5 courses, 5 parts of a journey, 5 translations of music into food. Marcus took off his chef's coat and wiped his face with a towel. His hands were finally steady now. The shaking had stopped. He felt calm and centered, the way he used to feel when cooking was still a joy, not just a job. Ready? Jessica asked. Marcus nodded. Together they pushed through the kitchen doors into the dining room. Henri Beaumont sat at the table where they had left him. He hadn't moved. He sat with his hands folded, waiting patiently. When he saw Marcus and Jessica approaching with the trays, he straightened in his chair, his expression neutral but attentive. Marcus set the first course in front of Henri. The jasmine tofu in its glass bowl, looking delicate and ethereal under the restaurant lights. This is the beginning, Marcus said simply. Innocence before understanding loss. Henri picked up his spoon and tasted the dish carefully. He closed his eyes, letting the flavors settle on his tongue. The floral jasmine, the citrus yuzu, the creamy tofu. He ate slowly, deliberately, giving the dish his full attention. He set down his spoon and looked at Marcus. He said nothing, but he nodded once. A small nod of acknowledgement. Marcus brought the second course, the clear soup with mushrooms and winter melon. Henri tasted it, and his expression changed. His eyes grew distant, sad. He took another spoonful, then another. When he finished, he set the bowl down gently. The white pepper, Henri said quietly. It is unexpected. It makes me pay attention even when the sadness wants me to drift away. Marcus felt a spark of pride. Henri understood. The third course came next. The black cod with the star anise miso glaze, the bitter rapini, the golden rice. Henri cut into the fish and watched the tender flakes fall apart. He took a bite, tasting each element separately and then together. This is longing, Henri said. The sweetness of what was, the bitterness of what is, and the hope of what could be. All on one plate. Marcus said nothing, but inside his heart was racing. Henri was reading his food exactly as he intended. The message was coming through. The fourth course was the duck. Henri cut into it, revealing the pink center. He tasted it with the cherry sauce and the roasted vegetables. He chewed slowly, thoughtfully. This is not surrender, Henri observed. This is fighting. This is choosing to live even when life hurts. Yes, Marcus said simply. Finally, the dessert. The coconut rice with mango arranged like a flower. Henri picked up his fork and took a small bite. His eyes widened slightly at the white pepper in the coconut cream. He took another bite, then another. When he finished, he set down his fork and sat very still. For a long moment, no one spoke. Jessica stood near the kitchen door, barely breathing. Marcus stood beside the table, his heart pounding, waiting for Henri's verdict. Finally, Henri looked up at Marcus. There were tears in his eyes again, just like when Marcus had played the piano. Chef Chen, Henri said, his voice thick with emotion. Tonight you have shown me what I have been searching for in all my years of eating in restaurants. You have shown me that food is not just technique. It is not just ingredients and methods. Food is communication. Food is emotion made visible. Food is love. Marcus felt his own eyes burning with tears. He blinked them back. You cooked with your soul tonight, Henri continued. Every dish told part of a story. The same story you played on that piano. The story of loss and memory and the choice to keep living despite the pain. This is what great cooking should be. Henri reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. He took out his business card and wrote something on the back. Then he took out a checkbook and wrote a check. He handed both to Marcus. Marcus looked at the check. It was for $800, more than twice what the most expensive tasting menu in the city would cost. This is not about money, Henri said. This is about respect, about honoring what you created tonight. Marcus looked at the business card. On the back, Henri had written a phone number and a note. Call me tomorrow. We need to talk about your future. I don't understand, Marcus said. Henri stood up slowly, his old bones creaking. I lied to you earlier, Chef Chen. Well, not exactly lied. But I was not completely honest. What do you mean? Marcus stood in the empty restaurant long after Henri Beaumont left. The check was still in his hand. $800. He stared at the numbers, hardly believing they were real. Jessica stood nearby, looking just as stunned as he felt. Did that really just happen? She asked quietly. Marcus nodded slowly. I think so. But I'm not sure I understand what just happened. Jessica walked over and looked at the check. He paid you $800 for one meal. Marcus, do you know what this means? That he's crazy? Marcus tried to joke, but his voice shook. No, Jessica said, smiling. It means you're good. Really good. I've worked here for 2 years and I've never seen you cook like that before. Marcus looked around his restaurant. The tables were empty. The lights were dim. The piano sat in the corner, still uncovered, its keys exposed. Everything looked the same as it had an hour ago, but somehow everything felt different. I need to sit down, Marcus said. He pulled out a chair and sat heavily. Jessica sat across from him. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. They just sat there in the quiet restaurant processing what had happened. Finally, Jessica broke the silence. What did he write on the business card? Marcus had almost forgotten. He pulled the card out of his pocket and looked at it again. He wants me to call him tomorrow. He said something about featuring me in a book, about authenticity in cooking. That's amazing, Jessica said. Henri Beaumont is famous. If he writes about you, people will come. The restaurant could be saved. Marcus wanted to feel excited, but instead he felt scared. What if tonight was just a fluke? What if he couldn't cook like that again? What if he had used up all his emotion in one night and had nothing left? What if I can't do it again? Marcus said out loud. Jessica frowned. Do what again? Cook like that. With feeling. What if tonight was just because he challenged me? Because I was emotional? What if tomorrow I go back to being the same tired chef who just goes through the motions? Jessica leaned forward. Marcus, listen to me. You didn't become a different person tonight. You just remembered who you were. That person is still there. You just have to choose to be him. Marcus looked at her. She was young, barely out of college, but sometimes she was wiser than people twice her age. You think it's that simple? He asked. No, Jessica admitted. I don't think it's simple at all. But I think it's possible. Tonight proved it's possible. Marcus stood up and walked to the piano. He ran his fingers over the keys again, not pressing them down, just touching them lightly. The wood was cool under his fingertips. My mother used to say that music and cooking were the same, Marcus said quietly. She said both needed the heart, not just the hands. I forgot that. After she died, I forgot everything she taught me except the technical stuff. I remembered how to cook, but I forgot why I was cooking. Jessica got up and walked over to stand beside him. What made you remember tonight? Marcus thought about that question. I think it was being forced to face something I was afraid of. I was afraid of the piano because it reminded me of her. I was afraid of the memories because they hurt. But Henri made me sit down and play anyway. And when I did, I realized something. What? The memories do hurt. But they also make me who I am. My mother is gone, but what she taught me isn't gone. It's still here in my hands, in my heart. I just had to be brave enough to use it. Jessica smiled. So what are you going to do now? Marcus looked at the check again, then at the business card. Then he looked around his restaurant, seeing it with new eyes. This place had been a burden for so long, a weight dragging him down. But maybe it could be something else. Maybe it could be what he had dreamed it would be when he first opened it. A place where food meant something. A place where cooking was art, not just business. I'm going to call Henri tomorrow, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. And I'm going to find out what he wants. But more importantly, I'm going to change how I run this restaurant. Change it how? Marcus walked back to the table and sat down. He pulled out a notebook from behind the counter, the one where he usually wrote supply orders and staff schedules. He flipped to a clean page. I'm going to create a new menu, he said, starting to write. Not the kind of menu that tries to please everyone. Not the kind that has 50 items because I'm afraid customers won't find something they like. A small menu, maybe only 5 or 6 dishes. But each dish will mean something. Each dish will have a story. Jessica pulled out a chair and sat down, watching him write with growing excitement. And I'm going to change how I cook, Marcus continued, his pen moving faster across the paper. No more just following recipes exactly the same way every time. I'll use recipes as a guide, but I'll cook with feeling. I'll taste as I go. I'll adjust based on intuition, not just measurements. What about the staff? Jessica asked. Are you going to tell them about all this? Marcus paused. Maria, he said. I need to talk to Maria tomorrow. She's been with me since the beginning. She deserves to know what I'm planning. He looked at Jessica. And you? Will you stay? If I make these changes, there's no guarantee it will work. The restaurant might still fail. But if you want to be part of trying something different, something real, I'd like you to stay. Jessica didn't hesitate. I'm in. This is the most excited I've been about this job since I started. Marcus smiled, a real smile this time, not the tired, fake smile he had been wearing for months. Okay then, we start tomorrow. They stayed up for another hour, Marcus making notes and Jessica asking questions. They talked about what the new menu might look like, what stories each dish could tell, how they could make the dining experience more personal, more meaningful. Finally, Marcus looked at the clock. It was past midnight. You should go home, he told Jessica. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a big day. Jessica gathered her things and headed for the door. Before she left, she turned back. Marcus? Yeah? Thank you for playing the piano tonight. Thank you for being brave enough to feel something again. It reminded me why I wanted to work with food in the first place. After she left, Marcus locked the door and turned off most of the lights, but he didn't leave right away. He walked back to the piano one more time. He sat down on the bench and placed his hands on the keys. This time he played a different song. Not Claire de Lune. Something else his mother had taught him. A simpler piece, a folk song she used to sing while she cooked. The melody was cheerful and light, nothing like the sad beauty of Debussy. Marcus played it slowly, making mistakes, but smiling as he played. The restaurant was empty, so no one heard him except himself. But that was okay. He wasn't playing for an audience. He was playing because it felt good. Because it connected him to his past in a way that didn't hurt quite so much anymore. When he finished, he closed the piano lid gently. Tomorrow he would need to get it tuned. If he was going to keep playing, it should sound better. Maybe he could play for customers sometimes. Not every night, but occasionally. Something special to make the restaurant unique. Marcus grabbed his jacket and walked out the back door, locking it behind him. The night air was cool and fresh. The street was quiet. As he walked to his car, he felt lighter than he had in years. That night, Marcus slept better than he had in months. No nightmares. No waking up at 3 in the morning worrying about bills. Just deep, peaceful sleep. The next morning, Marcus woke up early. He showered, dressed, and made himself a simple breakfast. Scrambled eggs with scallions, the way his mother used to make them. toast with butter, green tea. As he ate, he thought about what he needed to do. First, call Henri Beaumont. Second, talk to Maria about the changes he wanted to make. Third, start developing the new menu. Fourth, figure out how to pay his bills for the next few months while he rebuilt the restaurant's reputation. That last part was tricky. The $800 from Henri would help, but it wasn't enough to solve all his problems. He still owed money to his uncle. He still had rent and utilities and staff salaries to pay. But somehow, Marcus felt less worried about money than he had before. Maybe it was because he had something to work toward now, a vision, a purpose. Money problems seemed smaller when you had a reason to fight through them. At 9 o'clock, Marcus called the number on Henry's business card. The phone rang 3 times before someone answered. Hello? It was Henry's voice, clear and alert despite the early hour. Mr. Beaumont, this is Marcus Chen. You asked me to call you today. Ah, Chef Chen. Good morning. I was hoping you would call early. That tells me you are serious. Marcus took a deep breath. I am serious. You said you wanted to feature me in your book. I'd like to know more about that. Of course. But first I want to ask you something. How do you feel this morning? After last night? It was an unexpected question. Marcus thought about it carefully before answering. I feel awake, like I've been sleepwalking for years and suddenly I'm awake again. Henri made a sound of approval. Good, that is very good. Now let me tell you about my book. I have been working on it for 2 years. It is called The Soul of the Kitchen, Chefs Who Found Their Way Back. It is about chefs like you. Talented people who lost their connection to why they cook, and then found it again. How many chefs are in the book? Marcus asked. So far, I have profiled 8 chefs in different countries. You would be the 9th. Each chapter tells the story of how they lost their way, what happened to wake them up, and how they rebuilt their cooking and their lives. Marcus felt nervous. That sounds very personal. It is personal, Henri agreed. That is why it is powerful. People do not want to read about perfect chefs who never struggle. They want to read about real human beings who face real problems and find real solutions. Your story is compelling, Chef Chen. A son who loses his mother and loses himself in the process, who runs away from grief for 15 years, who finally faces his pain and discovers it is the source of his greatest strength. Hearing his life summed up like that made Marcus uncomfortable. But Henri was right. That was his story. If I agree to this, Marcus said slowly, what would it involve? I would spend time with you over the next 2 months. I would eat at your restaurant multiple times. I would interview you, your staff, maybe some of your family members if you have any. I would observe you cooking, developing your new menu, running your business. Then I would write a chapter about you, about 25 pages. And then what happens? The book will be published next year by a major publishing house. I have a good relationship with my publisher. The book will be marketed widely. There will be reviews, interviews, maybe some television appearances. When people read about you, they will want to come to your restaurant. They will want to taste the food from the chef who cooks with his soul. It sounded wonderful. It also sounded terrifying. What if I fail? Marcus asked. What if I can't cook like I did last night? What if it was just a one-time thing? Henri was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was gentle but firm. Chef Chen, last night was not a miracle. It was not magic. It was you finally being yourself. The real question is not whether you can cook like that again. The question is whether you will choose to cook like that again, whether you will have the courage to stay awake instead of going back to sleep. Marcus closed his eyes. Henri was right. This was about choice, about deciding every day to cook with his heart, not just his hands. I'll do it, Marcus said. I'll be part of your book. Excellent. I will come to your restaurant tomorrow evening. We will start the interview process. In the meantime, I want you to do something for me. What? I want you to close your restaurant for 1 week. Marcus almost dropped the phone. What? I can't close for a week. I have bills to pay. I have staff who need their hours. Chef Chen, listen to me. You cannot create a new menu while you are trying to run the old one. You cannot rebuild while you are maintaining. You need time to think, to develop, to practice. 1 week. Pay your staff for the week even though they are not working. Consider it an investment in the future. I can't afford to pay them if they're not working. Then I will help you. I will give you an advance. $2,000. Not as payment for the book, but as a loan. Interest-free. You can pay me back when the restaurant is successful again. Marcus was speechless. Why would Henri do this for him? They had just met last night. Why are you helping me? Marcus asked. Henri sighed. Because when my daughter died, I stopped living for a while. I just existed. I went through the motions. And then one day someone helped me. Someone pushed me to feel again, to live again. I promised myself that if I ever met someone else who was drowning, I would throw them a rope. Consider this your rope, Chef Chen. Grab it. Marcus felt tears in his eyes for the second time in 12 hours. Thank you, he whispered. You are welcome. Now close the restaurant tomorrow. Post a sign on the door saying you are closed for 1 week for menu development. Tell your staff tonight and start creating. After they hung up, Marcus sat for a long time staring at his phone. $2,000. 1 week to rebuild everything. A chance to create something real. He called Maria next. She answered on the second ring, sounding busy. She was probably at her second job, the one she took on to make extra money when the restaurant's hours got cut. Maria, it's Marcus. Can you talk? Sure, give me a minute. He heard her excuse herself and walk somewhere quieter. Okay, what's up? Marcus told her everything. About Henri Beaumont. About the challenge with the piano. About the 5 courses he cooked. About the book. About the week-long closure. About his plan to change the restaurant completely. Maria was quiet for a long time after he finished. Marcus held his breath, waiting for her response. I knew something was different about you last night, Maria finally said. When you came back to the kitchen after playing the piano, your eyes were different. You looked alive again. So you'll stay? You'll help me rebuild. Marcus, I've been waiting for you to wake up for 2 years. Of course I'll stay. This is what I signed up for in the beginning. Not just a job, but a chance to create something meaningful. I thought we had lost that. I'm glad we're finding it again. Marcus exhaled with relief. Thank you, Maria. I need you. I can't do this alone. You're not alone, Maria said firmly. You have me. You have Jessica. We're a team. Now let's show everyone what this restaurant can really be. They made plans to meet that afternoon to discuss the menu development process. Maria had ideas too. Dishes she had always wanted to try, but Marcus had been too conservative to attempt. Now was the time to be brave, to take risks, to cook from the heart. After hanging up with Maria, Marcus made one more call. To his uncle, the one who had loaned him money to open the restaurant. His uncle answered in Mandarin, his voice warm and familiar. Marcus, it is good to hear from you. How is the restaurant? Uncle, I need to tell you something. The restaurant has been struggling. I haven't been completely honest with you about how bad things have been. His uncle was quiet. Marcus could almost see him nodding, unsurprised. I suspected this. You have had worry in your voice for many months. But something happened last night, something that might change everything. Marcus told him about Henri, about the piano, about the new direction. When he finished, his uncle said, Your mother would be proud of you. Marcus felt his throat tighten. You think so? I know so. She always said you had a gift. Not just for cooking, but for feeling. She said you felt things more deeply than other people. That could be your weakness or your strength, depending on what you did with it. It sounds like you're finally making it your strength. I'm scared, Uncle. Good. Fear means you care. Fear means it matters. Just don't let fear stop you. Let it push you forward. They talked for a few more minutes, and his uncle offered to defer the loan payments for 3 months to give Marcus breathing room. It was another gift, another rope thrown to a drowning man. After the call ended, Marcus sat in his quiet apartment, surrounded by the morning light, and felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. He felt hope, not the desperate, grasping hope of someone drowning, but the solid, grounded hope of someone who had touched bottom and was pushing up toward the surface. The kind of hope that was mixed with fear and uncertainty, but also with determination and purpose. Marcus opened his notebook and began to write. He wrote about his mother, about the dishes she used to make, about the lessons she taught him, about the moments in the kitchen that had shaped who he was. Then he started sketching out ideas for dishes. Some were inspired by his mother's cooking. Some were completely new, but all of them had one thing in common. They told a story. They meant something. By the time the sun set that evening, Marcus had filled 20 pages with notes, sketches, and ideas. His hand was cramping from writing, but his heart was full. Tomorrow, he would close the restaurant and begin the real work of rebuilding. It would be hard. It would be scary. There would be moments when he doubted himself, when he wanted to give up, but he would not give up. Because he had made a promise to Henri. And more importantly, he had made a promise to himself and to his mother's memory. He would cook with his soul. He would create food that mattered. He would build something real. And if he failed, at least he would fail while truly living, not while sleepwalking through life. The next morning, Marcus arrived at his restaurant at 6 o'clock. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky with soft orange and pink light. He unlocked the front door and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of the space. It smelled like cooking oil and clean floors and possibility. He walked to the front window and taped up a handwritten sign. Closed for 1 week for menu development. Reopening with an exciting new direction. Thank you for your patience. Then he went to the kitchen and started preparing for the week ahead. Today, Maria and Jessica would arrive at 9. They were going to spend the week developing the new menu together, testing dishes, refining flavors, creating something that would make people remember why they loved food in the first place. Marcus pulled out all his cookbooks and stacked them on the counter. Books from his mother's collection, cookbooks from culinary school, modern cookbooks from famous chefs. He wasn't going to copy recipes from them, but he wanted inspiration. He wanted to remember all the possibilities that food offered. He also pulled out his mother's old recipe box. It was made of tin, painted with fading flowers. Inside were dozens of recipe cards written in her handwriting, some in English, some in Mandarin. Recipes for dumplings, noodles, soups, braised dishes. Simple food, made with love. Marcus hadn't looked at these recipes since she died. He had packed the box away, too painful to open. But now he spread the cards across the counter and read through them one by one. Each card brought back a memory. The smell of ginger and scallions. The sound of his mother humming while she cooked. The taste of her cooking, which had been the first food he ever loved. One card caught his attention. It was for her special dumpling filling. She had called them happiness dumplings because she said if you ate them when you were sad, they would make you feel better. The filling was simple: ground pork, Napa cabbage, ginger, scallions, sesame oil, and her secret ingredient, a small amount of sugar to balance the savory flavors. Marcus held the card carefully, reading her handwriting. At the bottom, she had written a note. Marcus, when you make these someday, think of me and smile. He did smile, even as tears blurred his vision. I will, Mom, he whispered. I promise. Maria arrived at 9 o'clock exactly, carrying a large bag with her. Jessica came in right behind her, looking excited and nervous at the same time. Good morning, Marcus said. Ready to work? Ready, Maria said firmly. Jessica nodded with enthusiasm. They gathered around the kitchen counter and Marcus explained his vision. I want to create a tasting menu. 8 courses. Each course tells part of a story. The story of my journey from grief to acceptance. The story of remembering who I am and why I cook. Maria listened carefully, her experienced cook's mind already working through the logistics. 8 courses is ambitious. How long will the tasting menu take to serve? About 2 hours. Maybe 2.5. We'll pace it slowly so people can enjoy each course, savor it, think about it. Jessica pulled out her phone to take notes. What about price? A tasting menu like this could be expensive. Marcus had thought about this. $75 per person. That's less than the fancy restaurants charge, but more than we've ever charged before. It needs to be accessible but also premium. This is special food. It should be priced like special food. How many people can we serve in one night? Maria asked. We only have 25 seats total. If we do 2 seatings, we could serve 50 people. But I think we should start with just 1 seating per night. Make it more exclusive. Make people want to get reservations. Maria nodded thoughtfully. That could work. Less pressure on the kitchen, too. We can focus on making each plate perfect instead of rushing. Exactly, Marcus said. He pulled out his notebook with all his ideas from the previous day. I've been thinking about what each course should represent. The first course is innocence, that moment before loss changes you. The last course is acceptance, finding peace with the past while living in the present. The middle courses are the journey between those 2 points. For the next 3 hours, they discussed each course in detail. What ingredients would work? What techniques would be needed? How the dishes would progress from light to heavy and back to light again, like a symphony moving through different movements. By noon, they had a rough outline for all 8 courses. Now came the hard part, actually creating the dishes. Let's start cooking, Marcus said. We'll test the first course today. Tomorrow, the second course. We'll work through them one by one. They decided to start with the first course, the one representing innocence. Marcus wanted something that looked simple but tasted complex. Something pure but interesting. He thought about childhood, about the foods that made him happy as a little boy. One memory stood out: eating lychee fruit with his mother on summer evenings. They would sit on the small balcony of their apartment, peeling the rough skin off the lychees to reveal the sweet, translucent white fruit inside. Lychee, Marcus said suddenly. The first course should feature lychee. Maria raised her eyebrows. Lychee is usually in desserts. How do you make it work as a savory first course? That's the challenge, Marcus said, smiling. That's what makes it interesting. They started experimenting. Marcus poached fresh lychees in a light syrup made with ginger and lime. While the lychees cooked, Maria prepared a base of whipped mascarpone cheese mixed with a tiny bit of wasabi, just enough to give it a subtle heat without being obvious. Jessica worked on the garnish, testing different herbs and edible flowers. They tried mint, which was too strong. They tried basil, which was too sweet. Finally, they settled on shiso leaves, which had a unique flavor that was both minty and slightly spicy. After 2 hours of testing and adjusting, they had created the dish. A small plate with a base of wasabi mascarpone, topped with the poached lychee, garnished with a fresh shiso leaf and a sprinkle of pink peppercorns. They drizzled a small amount of the poaching liquid around the plate. All three of them tasted it carefully. The first flavor was the sweetness of the lychee. Then came the creamy richness of the mascarpone. Then a subtle heat from the wasabi that made you pay attention. Finally, the shiso added a fresh, clean note that made you want another bite. The pink peppercorns added a gentle spice and a pop of color. "This is good," Maria said, sounding surprised. "This is really good." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "It tastes like summer and childhood and happiness." Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction. "That's exactly what I wanted. This is innocence. This is the feeling before you know that bad things can happen." They spent the rest of the day refining the dish, adjusting the amount of wasabi, testing different ways to poach the lychee, practicing the plating until they could do it consistently, beautifully every time. By the time they finished for the day, they were exhausted but happy. They had created something special. 1 course down, 7 to go. The next day, they worked on the second course. This one was supposed to represent the moment when innocence ends. When you first experience real loss, Marcus decided this course should be about shellfish. Shellfish lived in hard shells to protect their soft bodies inside. But sometimes the shells weren't enough. Sometimes you got hurt anyway. They chose scallops, large sweet sea scallops. Marcus seared them until they had a golden crust on the outside, but were still tender and slightly translucent on the inside. For the accompaniment, Marcus wanted something that represented vulnerability. He chose raw tomatoes, not cooked, not preserved, just fresh tomatoes at their most delicate state. He made a tomato water by blending ripe tomatoes and straining them through cheesecloth. The liquid that came through was clear and light with a pure tomato flavor. He served the scallop in a shallow bowl with the tomato water poured around it. For garnish, he added microgreens and a few drops of aged balsamic vinegar. When they tasted it, the dish was beautiful in its simplicity. The sweet scallop, the delicate tomato flavor, the slight acidity from the vinegar. It tasted fragile and precious, like something that could be lost easily. "This is sadness," Jessica said quietly, but gentle sadness. "The kind that makes you appreciate what you have." Marcus nodded. Exactly. They worked this way through the whole week. Each day they focused on 1 or 2 courses. Testing, tasting, adjusting, refining. Some dishes came together quickly. Others took all day to perfect. The third course was about confusion and searching. Marcus created a dish of multiple small elements on one plate. A piece of grilled octopus, a small salad of fennel and orange, a quail egg, and a crispy rice cake. The diner had to decide how to eat it, whether to combine the elements or taste them separately. It represented the confusion of trying to find your way when you're lost. The fourth course was about anger. Spicy, intense, demanding attention. Marcus made a dish with beef tongue, a tough cut that required long cooking to become tender. He braised it with chilies and Sichuan peppercorns until it was soft and rich. He served it with pickled vegetables to cut through the fat and heat. The dish was challenging and bold. The fifth course was about loneliness. A single piece of fish simply prepared sitting in the center of a large white plate. Cod poached in butter with just salt and lemon. No fancy sauces, no complicated techniques. Just the fish alone, delicious but solitary. It was the most minimal dish on the menu, and that was the point. The sixth course was about hope. Marcus created a risotto with spring vegetables. Asparagus, peas, fava beans. Everything was green and fresh, representing new growth. He finished the risotto with lemon zest and fresh herbs. It tasted like the world coming back to life after winter. The seventh course was about memory and acceptance. This was the duck course from the night he cooked for Henri, but refined and perfected. The duck breast with cherry sauce served with roasted root vegetables. It represented acknowledging the past without being trapped by it. The eighth and final course was about finding peace. Marcus created a dessert based on his mother's favorite, coconut rice with mango. But he elevated it by adding layers of flavor, cardamom in the rice, lime in the mango, and that subtle touch of white pepper in the coconut cream. It was familiar but new, comforting but exciting. It was about honoring tradition while creating your own path. By Friday afternoon, they had tested and perfected all 8 courses. They had timed how long each dish took to prepare. They had practiced plating each one until they could do it in their sleep. They had calculated food costs and determined they could make a small profit even at $75 per person. Marcus stood in his kitchen, looking at his team. Maria was cleaning the stove. Jessica was organizing the recipe cards they had created. They were tired but satisfied. "We did it," Marcus said. "We created something real." Maria looked up and smiled. "We created something beautiful." That evening, Henri Beaumont came to the restaurant as promised. He had been checking in throughout the week, observing from a distance, taking notes for his book. Now he was here to taste the complete menu. Marcus had set up a single table in the middle of the dining room, with a white tablecloth and fresh flowers. The piano sat nearby, and Marcus had spent an hour that morning tuning it with the help of a professional piano tuner. Henry arrived at 7 o'clock, wearing another impeccable suit. "Good evening, Chef Chen. Are you ready for tonight?" "I am," Marcus said, feeling more confident than he had in years. "Tonight I'm going to show you what we've created." Henri sat at the table and Marcus began to serve the 8-course tasting menu. Between courses, Henri asked questions about Marcus's childhood, about his mother, about the years of running away from his grief, about what changed the night Henri challenged him to play the piano. Marcus answered honestly, not holding back. If Henri was going to write about him, the story needed to be true. All of it. The pain and the joy, the failure and the success, the loss and the finding. As Henri tasted each course, he made notes in his small leather notebook. But mostly, he just ate and listened and observed. He watched Marcus's face as he talked about his mother. He watched the care with which Maria and Jessica plated each dish. He watched the way Marcus touched the piano keys gently between courses, as if drawing strength from the connection. After the final course, Henry set down his fork and looked at Marcus. "You asked me on the phone if you could cook like this again. If the first night was just a fluke. This week has answered that question, hasn't it?" Marcus nodded. "It wasn't a fluke. It was a choice, and I can make that choice every day. Every day will not be easy," Henri warned. "There will be days when you are tired, when the inspiration doesn't come, when the business pressures make you want to give up on this vision and go back to cooking the safe, boring food that pays the bills." "I know," Marcus said, "but I also know I can't go back to sleepwalking. Not after waking up. Even if it's hard, I have to stay awake." Henri smiled. "That is what I wanted to hear." He pulled out his notebook and showed Marcus some of what he had written. Pages of observations about the food, about the restaurant, about Marcus's journey. "I will need to come back several more times," Henri said, "to see how you handle the pressure when real customers are here, to see if you can maintain this level of cooking night after night. But I believe you can. I believe in what you are doing here." They talked late into the evening about the book, about marketing, about the future. Henri promised to send some of his colleagues to the restaurant. Food writers, critics, influential people in the culinary world, not to guarantee good reviews, but to give Marcus a chance to be seen. "The rest is up to you," Henri said. "I can open doors, but you must walk through them. You must show people what you showed me. That food is not just sustenance. It is communication, it is art, it is love made visible." After Henri left, Marcus sat at the piano again, This time he played for a longer time. He played Claire de Lune again, but it sounded different now. Less sad, more peaceful. He played some of the folk songs his mother had taught him. He played a few popular songs he remembered from the radio. Maria and Jessica sat at one of the tables listening and resting after the long week. The music filled the restaurant, making the space feel warm and alive. When Marcus finally stopped playing, Maria said, "You should do this for customers. Play the piano before service or between courses. Make it part of the experience." Marcus thought about it. Maybe. Let's see how the food goes first, one step at a time. Jessica stood up and stretched. "When do we reopen?" "Monday," Marcus said. "We open Monday with the new menu. I'll start taking reservations tomorrow." "Do you think anyone will come?" Jessica asked, then quickly added, "I mean, I know they will. But how will they know about the new menu?" Marcus pulled out his phone. "I'm going to post about it on social media. Tell the story honestly. Say that we've been struggling, that we lost our way and now we've found it again. Ask people to give us another chance." Over the weekend, Marcus wrote a post for the restaurant's social media accounts. He didn't try to sound professional or polished. He just told the truth. 3 years ago, I opened this restaurant with big dreams, but somewhere along the way I lost my passion. I started cooking to pay bills instead of cooking to create joy. The food was okay, but it had no soul. If you came here and were disappointed, I'm sorry. I was disappointed in myself too, but something happened recently that woke me up. I remembered why I became a chef in the first place. Because my mother taught me that cooking is love made visible. Because food has the power to tell stories, to create connections, to make people feel something. Starting Monday, we're reopening with a completely new direction, an 8-course tasting menu that tells a story. My story. The story of loss and grief and finding my way back to life. The story of remembering what matters. I can't promise perfection, but I can promise honesty. I can promise that every dish will be made with care and intention. I can promise that when you eat this food, you'll taste my heart in it. If you're willing to give us another chance, I'd be honored to cook for you. Reservations are limited. Call or message to book. Marcus posted it late Sunday night, then went to bed without checking to see if anyone responded. He was too nervous to look. The next morning he woke up to 37 messages. People wanting reservations. People saying they were excited about the new direction. People sharing their own stories of loss and finding hope again. A few former customers saying they always knew Marcus had greatness in him and were glad he found it. Within 2 hours, he had enough reservations to fill every seat for the entire first week. Marcus sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone in disbelief. They were coming. People were actually coming. He called Maria. "We're fully booked for the first week." Maria laughed with delight. I told you people would come if you gave them something real." "I'm scared," Marcus admitted. "Good," Maria said, echoing what his uncle had told him. "Fear means it matters. Now let's show them what we can do." Monday evening arrived. The restaurant was set up perfectly. Fresh flowers on every table, clean white tablecloths, soft lighting. The piano sat in the corner, polished and ready. Marcus stood in the kitchen in his clean chef's coat, his heart pounding. In 30 minutes, the first customers would arrive. The first night of his new life was about to begin. Maria put her hand on his shoulder. "You ready, chef?" Marcus took a deep breath, thinking of his mother, thinking of Henry's challenge, thinking of everything that had led him to this moment. "I'm ready," he said. And he was. The first customers walked through the door at exactly 6:30. A couple in their 40s dressed nicely, looking around the restaurant with curious eyes. Jessica greeted them warmly and showed them to their table. 2 more couples arrived within minutes. Then a group of 4 friends. Within 15 minutes, all 25 seats were filled. Marcus watched from the kitchen, his palms sweating. These were real customers paying real money, expecting real quality. This wasn't just cooking for Henry anymore. This was his restaurant's second chance. His life's second chance. "First table is ready," Jessica called through the pass. Marcus took a deep breath. "Let's begin." He started plating the first course with Maria's help. The lychee with wasabi mascarpone, shiso leaf, and pink peppercorns. His hands were steady now. The nervousness transformed into focus. He arranged each element on the small white plates with care, making sure every detail was perfect. Jessica carried the plates out to the first table. Marcus watched through the small window in the kitchen door. He saw the customers' faces as they looked at the dish. Curiosity, interest. They picked up their forks and tasted. Marcus held his breath. The woman's eyes widened slightly. She said something to her companion. They both smiled. Then they took another bite, savoring it more slowly this time. Relief flooded through Marcus. They liked it. Over the next 20 minutes, Marcus and Maria plated the first course for all the tables. Each plate had to be identical in appearance but made with the same care as if it were the only plate in the world. This was the challenge of running a restaurant versus cooking for one person, maintaining consistency without losing soul. The second course went out, the seared scallop in tomato water. Then the third course, the octopus with multiple elements. Marcus fell into a rhythm, his movements fluid and confident. Maria worked beside him like they had been doing this for years. Even though it was only their first night with the new menu, they moved together smoothly, anticipating each other's needs. Jessica came back to the kitchen with a message. Table 7 wants to talk to the chef. Marcus felt a spike of anxiety. Did they complain about something? No, the opposite. They loved it. They want to tell you in person. Marcus wiped his hands on his apron and went out to the dining room. Table 7 was an older couple, probably in their 70s. The woman had tears in her eyes. Chef, she said, her voice trembling slightly, I had to tell you, that scallop dish. The second course. It reminded me of my daughter. She passed away 3 years ago. The delicacy of it, the vulnerability, it was like tasting memory. Marcus felt his own throat tighten. I'm honored that it touched you. That's what I hoped for, that the food would make people feel something real. The woman reached out and squeezed his hand. Thank you. Thank you for caring enough to cook like this. Marcus went back to the kitchen with his eyes burning. Maria looked at him questioningly. Someone understood, Marcus said quietly. They really understood what I was trying to say. Maria smiled. Of course they did. You're speaking their language now, the language of the heart. The rest of the service went smoothly. The fourth course, the spicy beef tongue, made some people's eyes water, but in a good way. One customer asked for extra pickled vegetables to cool his mouth. The fifth course, the lonely piece of cod, made the dining room go quiet. People ate it slowly, contemplatively. The sixth course, the spring vegetable risotto, seemed to lift the mood again. The colors were so bright and cheerful. Marcus heard laughter from the dining room. The seventh course, the duck with cherry sauce, was received with appreciation. This was the most substantial course, the one that satisfied hunger while also satisfying the soul. Finally, the eighth course, the coconut rice with mango, finished with the subtle white pepper. Marcus made each plate carefully, thinking about his mother as he arranged the thin mango slices like flower petals. When the last plate went out, Marcus leaned against the counter, exhausted but exhilarated. They had done it. They had served all 25 customers without any major problems. No burned dishes, no timing disasters, no running out of ingredients. Jessica came back to the kitchen. Everyone wants to know if they can meet you. They're all asking about the story behind the menu. Marcus looked at Maria. She nodded encouragingly. Go, talk to them. This is part of it too. Connecting with the people you feed. Marcus took off his apron and walked into the dining room. The customers looked at him expectantly. He felt shy suddenly, uncomfortable with the attention. But he remembered what Henri said. People wanted real. They wanted honest. They wanted to connect with the person behind the food. Good evening, Marcus said, his voice a little shaky. Thank you all for coming tonight. For giving us a chance to share this food with you. Someone started clapping. Then everyone was clapping. Marcus felt his face flush. Can you tell us about the menu? Someone asked. Each course seemed to tell a story. Marcus took a breath and began to talk. He told them about his mother, about learning to cook from her, about losing her 15 years ago. He told them about losing his way, cooking without passion, going through the motions. He told them about Henri's challenge, about playing the piano, about remembering what his mother taught him. He told them that each course represented a stage of grief and healing. From innocence to loss to confusion to anger to loneliness to hope to acceptance to peace. Food is communication, Marcus said, finding his voice growing stronger. Tonight I tried to communicate what my journey has been like. If you felt something while eating, if any dish made you think about your own life, your own losses, your own moments of finding hope again, then I succeeded. That's all I wanted, to make you feel something real. The restaurant was completely silent when he finished. Then the older woman from table 7 stood up. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for being brave enough to share your heart with us." Others nodded in agreement. More applause. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the response. These were strangers, but in this moment they felt connected. Food had created a bridge between them. After the customers left, Marcus, Maria, and Jessica cleaned the kitchen and dining room. They worked quietly, all of them tired but satisfied. When everything was clean and ready for the next day, they sat down at one of the tables. "That was incredible," Jessica said. "I've never experienced a service like that before. Usually people just eat and leave. But tonight everyone wanted to talk. Everyone wanted to connect. That's the difference between a meal and an experience," Maria said. Tonight was an experience. Marcus looked around his restaurant. It looked the same as it had a week ago, but it felt completely different. It felt alive. It felt meaningful. "Thank you both," he said. "I couldn't do this without you." "We're just getting started," Maria replied. This was night 1. "We have 6 more nights this week, and then the week after that, and the week after that. The real challenge is maintaining this level of quality and care every single night." Marcus nodded. She was right. One good night didn't guarantee success. They had to prove they could do this consistently. Over the next 6 nights, Marcus and his team served the tasting menu to full houses every night. Word spread quickly. Food bloggers came and wrote glowing reviews. Local news did a story about the chef who plays piano and cooks with his heart. Henri Beaumont sent 3 of his colleagues, respected food critics, who all wrote positive articles. But it wasn't all easy. On Wednesday night, Marcus accidentally overcooked the scallops for one table. He had to remake them quickly, throwing off the timing for the rest of the courses. On Friday, they ran out of lychees because the supplier didn't deliver enough. Marcus had to improvise a different first course using figs instead. Each challenge taught him something. That even when you cook with care and intention, mistakes happen. That flexibility and creativity matter as much as following a plan. That sometimes the improvised solution is even better than the original idea. By the end of the second week, Marcus felt more confident. The menu was working. Customers were happy. Money was coming in. He could pay his staff properly. He could start making payments on his debts, but more importantly, he was happy. He woke up each morning excited to go to work. He looked forward to creating the dishes, to seeing customers' reactions, to the challenges of making everything perfect. One evening, 3 weeks after the reopening, Henri Beaumont came back. He didn't announce his visit. He simply showed up with 2 other people, a man and a woman, both well-dressed and professional-looking. Marcus recognized one of them. Charlotte Dupont. She was a famous food critic for a major culinary magazine. Her reviews could make a restaurant famous overnight. Marcus felt his heart race, but he didn't panic. He welcomed them warmly, seated them himself, and went back to the kitchen to prepare their meals with the same care he showed every customer. Throughout the service, Marcus cooked as he had been cooking every night. With focus, with feeling, with intention. He didn't try to make the dishes better than usual or add special touches just for the critics. He made them exactly as he had been making them because that was the point. Consistency, authenticity, truth. After the meal, Henri asked to speak with Marcus. They sat at a quiet table in the corner while Maria and Jessica finished cleaning up. "Chef Chen," Henri began, "I brought Charlotte and my editor, Raymond, tonight because I wanted them to see what I've been writing about. I wanted them to taste your food for themselves." Charlotte leaned forward. "Marcus, may I call you Marcus?" He nodded. "What you're doing here is rare. Most restaurants try to be everything to everyone. You're doing the opposite. You're being specific, personal, vulnerable, and it works. Your food made me cry. Actually cry. That hasn't happened in 15 years of reviewing restaurants." Raymond, the editor, spoke next. "Henri has been telling me about you for weeks. The story of the piano challenge, the complete menu overhaul, the transformation. I was skeptical. I thought maybe Henri was being too emotional, too personally invested. But now I understand. This is the kind of story our readers need to hear." "What does that mean?" Marcus asked carefully. Henri smiled. "It means we want to accelerate the publication schedule. Your chapter was going to be published in the book next year, but Raymond wants to publish it as a standalone feature article first, in the magazine, next month. The full story, with photos, with interviews. Then, When the book comes out, your chapter will be there too, but people will already know your name. Marcus felt dizzy. A feature article in a major culinary magazine. Photos, interviews, national attention. This could change everything for you, Charlotte said. After the article runs, you'll have people making reservations months in advance. You'll have opportunities to expand, to open new locations, to consult for other restaurants. Marcus thought about that. Expansion. New locations. It sounded exciting. It also sounded dangerous. He didn't want to lose focus. He didn't want to spread himself too thin and end up back where he started, cooking without soul. I'm grateful for the opportunity, Marcus said slowly. But I need to be honest. I don't want to expand quickly. I don't want to open new locations right away. I need to make sure I can maintain what I have here first. Make sure I don't lose the heart of what makes this place special. Henri nodded approvingly. That is exactly the right answer. That is why I believe in you. You understand that success is not about getting bigger. It's about staying true. Charlotte and Raymond spent another hour talking to Marcus about the article. A photographer would come next week. A writer would interview Marcus, Maria, Jessica, and some regular customers. They wanted to capture the whole story, not just the food but the emotion behind it. After they left, Marcus sat alone in the empty restaurant. The piano sat in the corner, quiet. He walked over to it and sat on the bench. His fingers found the keys almost automatically now. Playing had become part of his daily routine again, some mornings before service, some nights after closing. The piano was no longer something to avoid but something to embrace. He played Clair de Lune again. It had become his signature piece, the one that started everything. But tonight it sounded different. Not sad and yearning like the first time he played it for Henri. Not peaceful and accepting like the times after. Tonight it sounded grateful, like a thank you to the past, to his mother, to the pain that taught him who he was. When he finished, he sat quietly for a moment. Then he spoke out loud even though he was alone. I did it, Mom. I found my way. I'm cooking with my heart just like you taught me. I hope you're proud. The restaurant was silent, but somehow Marcus felt like she heard him. He felt her presence in the kitchen, in the food he made, in the way he moved his hands. She was gone, but she was also still here in everything he did. Marcus locked up the restaurant and drove home. Tomorrow would be another day of service. More customers to feed, more dishes to perfect, more connections to make through food. But tonight he allowed himself to feel satisfied. Not complacent, not finished, but satisfied with where he was. He had climbed out of the pit of grief and despair. He had found his purpose again. He had created something that mattered. Over the next few months, life became busy in the best way. The magazine article came out and created exactly the response Charlotte predicted. The phone rang constantly with reservation requests. Marcus had to start a waiting list. Some people waited 3 months to get a table. Other restaurants started reaching out, asking Marcus to consult, to teach, to share his philosophy. A cooking school invited him to give a lecture about cooking with emotion. A food festival wanted him to be a featured chef. Marcus accepted some opportunities and declined others. He was careful not to overextend himself. The restaurant came first. The daily practice of cooking with intention came first. Everything else was secondary. Henri's book was published 8 months after that first night. The Soul of the Kitchen, Chefs Who Found Their Way Back, became a bestseller. Marcus's chapter was the longest in the book, spanning 30 pages with beautiful photos of his food, his restaurant, and him playing the piano. The book tour brought Henri back to town. He and Marcus had dinner at the restaurant, this time as friends rather than critic and chef. They talked about Henri's daughter, about Marcus's mother, about the ways that loss shapes us but doesn't have to destroy us. You saved my restaurant, Marcus said over coffee after the meal. Henri shook his head. No, you saved your restaurant. I just gave you a push. You did the hard work. You made the choice to wake up, to feel again, to cook with your soul. Still, I'll always be grateful for that push, for the challenge, for forcing me to face the piano. Henri smiled. Do you know what the best part is? This story isn't just about you. Since the book came out, I've received dozens of letters from chefs all over the world. Chefs who read your story and recognize themselves in it. Chefs who had lost their way and decided to find it again. You've inspired people you'll never meet. Marcus felt humbled by that thought. His personal struggle, his painful journey had somehow become larger than himself. It had become a story that helped others. 1 year after the reopening, Marcus threw a small anniversary party at the restaurant. He invited Henri, Charlotte, his uncle, Maria's family, Jessica's parents, and some of his regular customers. The people who had supported him through the transformation. During the party, Marcus stood up to make a toast. "A year ago, I was drowning. My restaurant was failing. I had lost my passion for cooking. I was just going through the motions, waiting for the inevitable failure. Then a strange French man walked into my restaurant 20 minutes before closing and challenged me to play the piano. Everyone laughed. Henry raised his glass with a smile. That challenge changed my life," Marcus continued. "Not because it was easy, but because it was hard. It forced me to face the grief I had been running from for 15 years. It forced me to remember what my mother taught me, that cooking is love made visible. That food should come from the heart, not just the hands." Marcus looked around the room at all the faces. "This past year hasn't been perfect. There have been hard days. Days when I was tired, when the inspiration didn't come easily, when I wanted to give up. But I didn't give up because I wasn't alone. Maria and Jessica believed in me. My uncle supported me. Henri gave me a chance. And all of you, my customers, you showed me that people still hunger for food that means something." He raised his glass higher. "So this toast is not just to the restaurant's success. It's to all of you. To the people who reminded me that connection is what matters, that vulnerability is strength, that cooking with your soul is not just possible, it's essential. Thank you." Everyone raised their glasses and drank. Then Maria called out, "Play us something, Marcus." Marcus walked to the piano and sat down. He had played for customers many times over the past year, usually soft background music before service. But tonight he wanted to play something special. He started with Claire de Lune, the song that began everything. But this time he didn't play it alone. Halfway through, he transitioned into a folk song, the one his mother used to sing. He played it with joy, with energy, with life. People started clapping along. Some began to sing. The restaurant filled with music and laughter and the warmth of people coming together. Food and music and friendship all woven together into a moment of pure happiness. When Marcus finished playing, he didn't feel sad. He felt grateful. Grateful for his mother's lessons. Grateful for Henry's challenge. Grateful for the second chance he had been given. Grateful for every person in the room who had been part of his journey. Marcus Chen had learned something important over the past year. Loss doesn't end. Grief doesn't disappear. The people we love and lose stay gone, but we don't have to stay lost. We can find our way back. We can choose to wake up, to feel, to create, to love again. And when we do, we honor the people we lost by living fully, by using what they taught us, by making something beautiful out of the pain.